Hello, Planets.Nu. This is Talespin, and this is a new video series I'm starting on how to wage war at Planets.Nu. So the first thing I thought was appropriate to talk about was grand strategy. And when I say grand strategy, I don't mean tactics like privateer wolfpack tactics or growth taxing or cloak and intercept tactics or anything like that. What I'm talking about is how you approach each war, each sector, and how you wage war within that sector. So for me, there are three aspects of grand strategy. And you can look up Wikipedia and all kinds of definitions and military books and articles about military strategy and grand strategy and high strategy. And they all list all sorts of different things that the concept of grand strategy involve. But for me, specifically speaking about Planets.Nu, there are three aspects that I'd like to talk about. And those three aspects are diplomacy, military, and economy. So diplomacy is all those things about making trades, alliances, breaking them, backstabbing them, who can you trust, how do you talk to people, do you talk to them nicely, do you threaten them, do you work with them, do you cooperate? There's all that involved with diplomacy. But for grand strategy, we want to think beyond trade and treaties. We want to think beyond who are targets and who are not targets. And we want to think this question: how will I influence other empires through dialogue? And that's your diplomacy. How am I going to influence those empires? By talking to them. The military aspect of grand strategy. Yes, the military involves ships and bases and minefields and whatever, but we're going to think beyond that, beyond torpedoes and ammunition and fighters and defense posts. We're going to think beyond that. We're going to think beyond killing your neighbors and who's the next person I'm going to kill and how am I going to kill that person and what kind of ship tactics am I going to use to kill those neighbors. You're going to think beyond that. And so when it comes to grand strategy of military, we're going to think, how will they influence other empires through violence? And I specifically put diplomacy first because if you can influence through diplomacy first, that is the best choice so that you don't use your military resources. But obviously it's a war game, so you do at some point have to use violence, your military power, to influence them. So in this aspect of grand strategy, we're talking about how to influence empires through violence. And then the third thing, economy, is we're going to think beyond colonists and taxes, minerals, factories, and mines. We're going to think beyond that. We're going to think beyond, how do I build enough ships to fight this first opponent? How do I build enough ships to fight the next opponent? We're going to think beyond that. And we're going to think, how will I develop a long-lasting, durable empire? So developing a grand strategy is I'm suggesting that we do two things to develop a grand strategy. And the first is to create a statement of commitment for each aspect. And what that means is you're going to choose one thing that you're going to stay committed to for the whole game, for the whole fight in one sector. Maybe later on, maybe you have to change it, but try to stick to one commitment through that whole sector. And then the second thing we're going to do is develop 1 to 2 measurable objectives for each of these. So I'll show you examples. This is an evil empire diplomatic strategy. So the question we were asking for diplomacy was, how will I influence other empires through dialogue? And so my commitment, what I'm going to be committed to, is I will be involved in wars all over the sector. The evil empire has probes. They have the ability to gather information, and they can be involved in other people's wars. And so I am being committed the whole way through this sector's war to be involved in all those wars. And my objective, I only have one in this case, is to send probes to 6 different races. Now, I don't include my 2 neighbors, but there are 8 other races around the map. And what I'm saying here is that to measure whether or not I've been involved all over the sector, have I been fully committed? I will measure that by sending 6 probes. And I will interact with 6 different races throughout the game. So that's an example of developing your grand strategy for diplomacy. And then we have the evil empire military strategy. So how will I influence other empires through violence? And I'm going to be committed here by restricting the movement of other races. So the main goal, the whole push behind my ships, my defenses, my tactics of attacking, whatever I do, my main goal is to restrict the movement of other races. And so my measurable objectives are, I will place a Gorby on every fuel planet. So if there's big, 10K fuel in one planet, there will be a Gorby there. And I have 2 objectives in this case. The other one is I will build Mark 7 mine layers. Both of those are measurable. I will know if I have accomplished them or not. And whether or not this is successful or not depends on the end of the game. And of course, you evaluate that at the end of the game and say, okay, well, maybe that didn't work. Let's try something different. But anyway, that's an example of military grand strategy. And then we have evil empire economic strategy. How will I develop a long-lasting, durable empire? And the reason why I actually specifically say long-lasting and durable is you can push your empire to eat up resources, to just attack that first person with everything you got. Maybe you defeat that first person, but in the end, your empire is not going to last very long, and eventually someone else is going to come in and swoop in and take over your empire. So that's why I think it's important to develop a long-lasting, durable empire. So for the EE in this example, our commitment is going to be to growing maximum population growth. So I'm going to move clans to the planets with good temperatures, and I have measurable objectives. And the objectives are, I'm going to use the growth tax method for all natives and all colonists, and I will never build more than 100 mines. My whole goal there is just to build the greatest population I can. So that is an example of EE grand strategy with for military, for economic, and diplomatic strategies. So that's my example of grand strategy. And one thing I wanted to say at the end is everything else in Planets is just situational tactics. But grand strategy gives direction and purpose to your empire. Objectives and commitments change with every war, but if you have no grand strategy for your sector's war, then your empire is aimless. All right, we'll see you out there.